The war in West Asia is bad news for the global economy. It's a no-brainer really. Conflicts anywhere create new challenges, and this is an oil-producing region, West Asia, so conflict here creates multiple uncertainties, especially for oil-importing countries like India. So how is India faring? Is the war hurting our growth story, or is India showing resilience? Leading economists have been weighing in on the subject, and they remain optimistic about India. One of them is Larry Summers, former U.S. Treasury Secretary and now professor at Harvard. Last week, Larry Summers was asked about the Indian economy, and he was bullish. Listen to what he said. I'm quoting, "I'm optimistic about India's prospects to increase its GDP sixfold by the century of independence, and be the most rapidly growing economy in the world over the next 5 years, the next decade, and the next generation among major economies." So by 2047 India would increase its GDP by 6 times. That is what Summers says. He also hailed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his economic policies. According to Summers, Prime Minister Modi has quote-unquote energized the Indian economy. He praised India's progress in building both physical and digital infrastructure, and Summers is not the only one saying this. Alvaro Santos Pereira is also bullish on India. He's the chief economist of the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's an intergovernmental organization, sort of like a club of rich countries. It has 38 members, OECD, and it works to promote global trade. India is not a member of OECD, but it works closely with this group. And this is the OECD's assessment of India, that recent reforms will benefit the Indian economy. Again, I have a quote. It's exactly this reformist attitude that you can see prevailing and across all levels of government. Every time that I come here, I see progress. The country is moving very well. India will continue to do really well in the next few decades. Which reforms is Pereira referring to broadly to? First, how we deal with bankrupt companies, and second, how we get foreign investments. These are the two things that he's talking about. Let's take this one by one. The first reform is the insolvency and bankruptcy system. What is an insolvent company? It is one that cannot repay its debt, basically a company that has run out of cash. Earlier, India lacked a mechanism to deal with such companies, so it took years for a failed business to wind up. It was very hard to shut a business in India, but that's not the case anymore. The government introduced a reform. It sped up the liquidation of failed businesses, meaning you can now quickly wrap up and move on. According to the OECD, that's the first big positive. The second is the easing of restrictions in FDI. FDI, as you would know, is foreign direct investment. It's easier to get it now, so there are fewer hoops to jump through. Pereira says these changes have made India attractive to investors, both foreign and domestic investors, so India's long-term growth story remains intact. What about the short term? Will geopolitical challenges slow down India's growth? Honestly, it's too soon to tell, but Indian businesses are not too worried. The CII recently conducted a survey, that's the Confederation of Indian Industry. This survey reveals some interesting insights. Businesses are confident about India's growth, and where does this optimism stem from? For starters, consumption activity. Businesses feel that it is going to rise in the coming days, including the demand from rural India. They expect it to rise. It's expected to strengthen. What else? Fresh private investment and the government's continued focus on reforms. All these factors together are being seen as positives for the Indian economy, so the momentum is clearly in India's favor. The challenge now is to turn it into long-term sustainable growth. Thanks for watching this video.